Entrepreneur Rap episode 11. It's Brett Regan, David Brickley. We are live now on facebook.com/ the Entrepreneur Rap.
Like, comment, share.
Um, and of course, we asked you to subscribe on iTunes with the Entrepreneur Rap. So episode 11, here we go. All right. So as we always do, jump into industry news and insight. And here we go again. Mark Zuckerberg taking a shot at Snapchat. Facebook Stories now. What was that? I don't know what that was.
We're okay.
Facebook Stories puts a Snapchat clone above the news feed. So Facebook Stories just launched in Ireland, essentially what Instagram Stories is, but for Facebook exclusively. And it looks like it's going to be coming to more countries in coming months. So Facebook now going to have stories after already cloning the whole Snapchat game on Instagram Stories. The only question now is how Facebook's going to handle the stories on desktop, because right now it would only work on mobile. But once again, Zuckerberg trying to carve a niche there into the Snapchat model.
What do you think about that strategy? I know we've talked about it on previous episodes where it's been successful in certain areas, but what's your overall thought on kind of just copycatting across the board?
It's working.
Right, so your opinion is proof is in the
Very
pudding, it's
successfully.
working. Okay.
They mentioned in this article on TechCrunch, if you can get similar functionality in a convenient place without having to rebuild a friend graph, some people will be happy to settle for a clone. And that's exactly what happened with Instagram, especially with brands, but with people too. You already had that built-in friend base. They added that cool feature. So like instead of me downloading another app and starting with 0 friends and working my way up, why don't I just take part of this new Instagram Stories? And now the biggest social network of them all, Facebook, going to have that same technology.
Yeah. Well, I was late to Snapchat, but when you initially got Snapchat, what was the draw? Was it that there were people on Snapchat that weren't on other platforms, or was it the actual functionality? Sometimes I wonder, like, why would you be drawn to a new social platform?
It was a
at all?
completely different way to share. I think there's been this graph, this evolutionary graph. Back when we were in college, girls especially, but guys, I guess as well. You would go on vacation and then upload 115 photos into a Facebook album, and you would, share huge paragraphs of what you're feeling and things like that. And I think the millennial generation got sick of everybody knowing all their information and being able to cycle through all their photos of their entire life. So Snapchat gave you that 24-hour, like, hey, you can see what I'm doing, but then it goes away and it disappears. It's just a totally different way to share. And obviously it caught on very strong to the fact that, Snapchat obviously going its IPO, but that was the difference. It was a different way to share.
Right. Well, and it seems to me, most of the people that were on it in the early stages, it was because it was more private. You would be notified if somebody screenshotted you. You could be a little more yourself and not worry about your grandmother seeing
too.
it.
It's all about the next cool thing, because right now 12-year-olds, they don't necessarily want to be on Snapchat because their older brother and sister or potentially their parents are on Snapchat, so they want to find their social media platform. So I think Facebook became what our moms and grandmas were on. Instagram, it's my mom's starting to download that too. What's the new fresh one that all the cool kids are on? And that was Snapchat for quite some time. But the reason why I bring up the Facebook stories is, here's another headline. Snapchat growth slowed 82% after Instagram stories launched. So there's no doubt about it that the Zuckerberg clone really hurt Snapchat's model, and especially right before they apply for the IPO, and they have to start making all this stuff public. Their quarterly numbers were just incredible, quarter over quarter over quarter. And then Instagram Stories comes out, and it totally just stunted their growth.
Okay. So my story is also Snapchat related. Leading right into it is the Snap, which is their official name now. They've officially filed for an IPO at a $3 billion placeholder amount. Obviously, that will jump. Most of the figures that have been circulated were the 25.
So they filed for $3 billion, and then it just, from the stock market.
Well, because you're floating it, so it's essentially like what they assume the market will purchase for. So you open it up, but the shares will be at a higher value. Some of the releases, because of the nature of going public, when you do that, you have to really open up your books quite a bit. Am I low here?
Yeah.
Because of the nature of it, they require you to open up your books. So some disclosures that I want to read out. 158 million average daily active users. We've discussed this previously on the show, but almost all the other social platforms list their users on a monthly basis, which means throughout the month they're using it. But Snapchat really wants to focus on the daily active users.
Right.
Theoretically, to say that, hey, they're using it every single day, but it also helps inflate their numbers a bit. Annual revenue growth of 404 million in 2016, which was up from 58.6 in 2015.
And they're expecting like 1 billion in 2017, supposedly.
Right. So they are growing, but 404 million at a $25 billion valuation, those may be things that are tough to justify.
Yeah, but welcome to 2017.
Right. So a lot of players are involved in the Snap IPO. I assume that they'll probably get in the $20 to $25 billion range. I'm not sure that from a nuts and bolts arithmetic, you can really come up with something where it totally makes sense to pay that much. However, Facebook has set the model. So everybody looks at it now. If you bought at the IPO for Facebook, you would have done very well. So Snapchat is positioning itself as the next Facebook, for better or worse.
Yeah, and then going back to the Instagram stories thing, Snapchat was growing at just 1/5 of the speed it was 2 quarters earlier. So that really dented their growth. And I think Gary Vee's mentioned this a lot, that what it did was it slowed down the 35, 40, 45-year-olds from downloading a new app called Snapchat and checking it out and seeing what it's all about. Since Instagram stories came out, it stunted that market. So yes, you do have the younger generation, but in order to have a $25 billion valuation, you got to get everybody, and that should be the ultimate goal, especially from an ad revenue standpoint. You want more users, you want a ton of demographics from age variables and things like that. So it'll just be interesting to see. You mentioned this too. They got to come out with something new, and not probably a new head of new sunglasses or a new pair of shoes if they want to go that route, but something with the app that is new. But does then Zuckerberg just copy that as well? And it continues to go back and forth. So we'll see.
Prior to most companies' IPO, they do a road show where they really go around to everybody and explain what's great about their platform. And in this case, a lot of that has been, we've got Evan Spiegel. He is the visionary.
Yep.
They want to liken him to a Steve Jobs or a Mark Zuckerberg to say he saw the opportunity here. He's grown this company all the way to where it is, which is a contender against, the largest other platform. 26 years old, Stanford grad, and they want to put him up there and say, look.
Married to a supermodel.
Bad idea. Terrible idea. Anyway,
right, wow. Okay.
I won't go into that.
Hey.
But I think that's really what they are trying to say. Like, hey, there's a lot of questions about the value here, but we've got a visionary. And in the end, if you've got a visionary, they'll always find a way to get there because
stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look back in the histories of Zuckerberg, Jobs, some of those other visionary type guys, it's totally true. They're the reason why that company was able to be successful. It's not just a business model because they have to be shifting constantly into a bunch of different areas. Yes, they've got support. Yes, they've got other people around them. But they were really the central leadership.
And you go back to a few years ago when Zuckerberg, offered $3 billion to purchase Snapchat. Let's say Spiegel says, all right, let's do it. Does it push the game as much as it have? Probably not, because Snapchat was able to do it. Facebook didn't have a competitor, so they cloned it. Now you have Instagram stories and now Facebook stories. So the non-monopoly has helped the social media space, I think, because Zuckerberg knows he has to compete with that new model. So I think they're going to be going back and forth at each other and helping the overall space.
Yeah. And, from my perspective, though, in 5 years, is Snapchat in a similar position as Twitter? Very possible.
Or they can be what Facebook's doing. So it's always a coin toss, right?
Yeah. I mean, my thought is that there's probably never going to be another Facebook because now everybody's incentive is to create new social platforms all the time. And every 4 or 5 years, there's going to be a newer, younger, hotter one.
I think if Facebook Live doesn't come out with stories and purchase Instagram and have Facebook Live, it'll die.
Facebook? Oh, yeah. I totally agree.
But if you don't continue to innovate, so it's not as if, that's, always going to be what it is. It's amazing. It's incredible. Like you have to continually make it something that people want to stay on or download, or new users come on board, or new countries, or whatever your ultimate goal is. But
No, I'm not saying there won't be a competitor to Facebook and they'll always win. What I'm saying is now I think that every few years there's always going to be a hot new social startup.
of course.
And those are going to take a bigger chunk out of a Snapchat and a Musically than they would of a Facebook because it's so established and everyone's kind of already on there. That's like the default. And then people are looking for another few. So I do think Snapchat is going to have more competition because now they're not the little scrappy upstart going up against Facebook.
Well,
there's going to be a bunch of little
and
scrappies.
Instagram probably felt that same way 6 months ago when Snapchat was doing so well, taking all the new users. People knew what Instagram was all about. It wasn't really changing that much. And then over the last 6 months with Instagram Stories and the Explore tab, it has now, reinvented itself.
Yeah.
So I agree.
Yeah. But it's, if Facebook continues to copy what they're doing every time they do come out with something innovative, and all the newer, smaller ones are able to be more innovative, quicker and come up with those ideas, I feel like they're going to be facing it from both sides, and there's no conglomerate over the top of Facebook, so they're almost like, monopoly status.
And you may not know this answer at all, but I'll throw it out there. Even Apple, their store layout, they have patented and, made sure people don't copy that. So obviously with their phones and with their earphones and everything that Apple does, they have a crazy amount of copyright and patents and things like that. When it comes to a social media app and they come out with a new feature, is all that stuff just not able to say, hey, this is our IP or this is something that you cannot just copy?
I think it's very difficult to say that you own a particular feature.
You
now,
own 24-hour
the
video.
code of how they're doing it, they would, for sure have protected. But it would be like, hey, everyone's into pumpkin spice lattes. You're not going to be able to steal our recipe, but if, Dunkin' Donuts wants to compete and say, we got a pumpkin thing of our own, you couldn't come out and say, well, hey, we think pumpkin's going to be popular. We want to be the only ones to do it. So I'm pretty sure in these occasions, especially when it comes to tech, other than the actual, code and the way that they're doing it, I'm not sure that you can protect the overall idea.
I'm just saying,
if
you're as big as Facebook, you potentially could just sit back on your heels, wait for someone to come out with something, let that company invest the money, test the market, see if the market likes it, and then just clone it immediately. I mean, they have so much money that they're able to do that.
Well, keep in mind, every single question on Shark Tank from Kevin O'Leary is, what if this is protectable?
Yeah.
And in most occasions, it's not protectable.
Can I invest my own money?
And they say, I'm either going to invest my own money and beat you, or the bigger guys are just going to wait for you to prove the model, squash you, and do it themselves. So oftentimes,
I remember him saying that about the individual wine that you can buy, like at Bevmo. It was just in little glasses, like with.
But I thought he bought that.
I think he did, but he's like, "Can I just go and do this, or do you have some type of IP or patent on this glass?"
And I think the person did have some sort of protection on that glass, where it was, whatever. But I don't know enough about the patent laws because it seems absurd that there are some people.
But you're
that
right.
hold
I mean, how
patents.
can you patent live video? I mean, live video has been around since,
Right, but haven't we heard issues where like Mark Cuban and Adam, I'm forgetting his name, podcaster from Man Show, Adam Carolla. Didn't he get sued from someone who essentially owns the?
You can sue, I guess, anybody. I guess if Snapchat really wanted to sue Facebook, they could, but they would want to win ultimately.
Right, but if you go to the patent office and there's a clerk there who accidentally let something slide that shouldn't, and you own the right to be able to
what I'm saying is you can't
broadcast something digitally.
A circle of Brett's face and I tap on it and it shows me a 10-second video. I mean, that's so basic. If you really look at it, nuts and bolts,
I've also
10-second video.
But I have heard like real issues where somebody has gotten the patent for something that's almost like obvious. Mm-hmm. There was somebody on Shark Tank who held a patent, a design patent for clothing that had areas for wires to go through, and he held the patent and had defended it successfully. Yeah. So, it's just one of those things where I think the other firms fight pretty hard to make sure that their competitors can't get anything done.
I thought this was interesting. We talk about Amazon quite a bit, but Walmart, this is an article from February 1st on Business Insider, introduces a new shipping policy. I think you and I have mentioned a lot that everybody now in this culture is used to the 2-day free shipping, and everybody's going to have to pretty much catch up and offer that, whether they like it or not. And Walmart announced that it will offer free 2-day shipping on orders over $35, no $99 annual fee necessary. So Walmart now understanding that that's what people want, so they're offering free shipping for all their users.
Which, I mean, in certain circumstances, there's companies who are basically breaking even on a product just to add in a little bit of extra shipping costs.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you've seen, just terrible BS products on late night, and it's, plus shipping and handling. It's like the product itself is not making them any money. They have a handling charge or the shipping charge or whatever it is, and they upsell that. So, anybody who's got a company now, period, where shipping has some sort of margin for them is going to be in a lot of trouble.
The only thing
because now it's just shipping is free basically.
I think Amazon has really took it on the chin because they know ultimately it will help them in the long run. But then they've also had the foresight to say, why don't we create our own delivery parcel system, which they're going towards that route, so they can cut out UPS or USPS. So that's the only issue with a Walmart. If they haven't started on that infrastructure, they can't ultimately save the money down the road that Amazon will end up doing, because Amazon's going to also be shipping the thing themselves as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's to the point now where any company is totally possible to be undercut and gone in the next 10 years just because slight shifts in technology can mean such huge differences. But Walmart could be a total thing of the past in 10 years.
I like it. I mean, if it's easy, everybody would do it. So as the things shift, you have to shift with them. I saw this actually on the Joe Rogan podcast. Wanted to get your thought. There's a New York Times article. This is way back in September, but it's entitled "How the Sugar Industry Shifted Blame to Fat." So the sugar industry paid scientists back in 1960 to play down the link between sugar and heart disease and promote saturated fat as the culprit instead of sugar. And it sounds like Coca-Cola, who has provided millions of dollars in funding to researchers to play down the link between sugary drinks and obesity. They paid 3 Harvard scientists the equivalent of about 50 grand back in 1967 to essentially publish, hey, sugar's not that bad. It's all about this saturated fat that's causing obesity. But you and I had a conversation earlier this week about ExxonMobil going head to head and, trying to get a marketing message out there to say that oil and coal and everything like that isn't hurting the climate. But it is kind of sad, man. It's sad that, you can have Coca-Cola just spend millions and millions of dollars to negate something that is technically true, just to kind of pull the wool over the eyes of the average citizen, because most of the people aren't going to do. I didn't know it. I didn't know they did this.
Right. Well, I think one of the major issues is that funding to universities and health organizations, really should be coming more from the government, so that in general, it's going to be more objective. But even at UCSD, where I went to school, you walk through and it's a huge science school, but there's a Pfizer lab. So Pfizer poured all this money into that lab, which in theory is a really good thing, because they're saying like, hey, we want you to think about working for Pfizer afterwards. We're a great company. We're involved, and we want to,
But no good deed is
well, but it's just, it starts to feel like, well, is there going to be a study coming out of that lab that says, hey, man, Pfizer's really got a, problem here with this one particular drug, and we've studied it, and it's killing people. Something tells me that report doesn't come out of the Pfizer lab. So I would rather see a lot of that funding come from the government, and, across the board, even under Democratic administrations, it's not like there's been a ton of money that goes to
well, that happened in
universities
with smoking, right? In the tobacco age, tobacco companies were doing the same thing, like trying to dispel the link between lung cancer and smoking.
There were medical doctors smoking on commercials talking about how their cigarette was healthier than the other cigarette.
Yeah, and how it reduces stress and it's good for you, and then all these people drop dead. Like, it's just so inhumane in a way. And the fact that these big corporations can just pay off these scientists to produce these reports in prestigious journals saying that we believe or we've tested and this is what's going down, and it's still affecting the science of this day. You do hear a lot about saturated fat, a lot more than sugar, and then you've seen those graphs where how much sugar is in an average can of Coke. It's crazy. Right. It's like 10 times the amount you should actually have per day or something.
Yeah, so. And I don't have any evidence to back this up, but I would assume like the childhood obesity thing isn't because they're eating fatty foods. It's because they're drinking soda all day, every day.
Yes.
So if you're drinking even diet soda.
The problem is the liquids that you're consuming every day.
Yeah, instead of drinking water all day long, you drink a 6-pack of Diet Coke.
Yeah, it's a problem.
That's terrible for you. I mean, I can see why if you drank something like that all the time, it would lead to you being really sick and dying eventually. But who knows, in 20 years, it may be looked upon like, oh man, remember when Coca-Cola, like everyone thought about polar bears and like it was great and open happiness, and now we think
well,
of
one
them.
time they had cocaine in it, so at least they got rid of that.
Right. But that's where, we may look back at it and go, can you believe that people were just drinking like battery acid basically and drinking it all day every day and everyone thought it was okay? And, in the future when people
I do
water,
think there's going to be something with our cell phones and computer screens. I think for our vision and for eyes to look at a screen 12, 13 hours a day or more, we've never had the data for people looking at screens like that for 20, 30, 40 years in a row. I think I don't know if it's eye cancer or people go blind earlier, but something's going to happen with this generation, I think, when it comes to computer time and mobile usage.
Yep.
Just constantly in your face. All right, so what we learned this week is
hold on. I got one more. Mike, can you pull up the video? I want to show a video here. It's making the rounds right now. Kellyanne Conway discussing the immigration ban, whether you call it a ban or not. I'll leave up to you. We able to pull that, Mike? Let's do it. I'm not seeing the video.
President Obama had a 6-month ban on the Iraqi refugee program after 2 Iraqis came here to this country, were radicalized, and they were the masterminds behind the Bowling Green massacre. Most people don't know that because it didn't get covered.
Let's talk about the major strategic goals.
All right, we can stop there.
That was not true, right?
So, we can stop that. So the point of that is that she said, she mentioned 2 Iraqi immigrants, refugees were responsible for the Bowling Green massacre, at which point people started looking up Bowling Green massacre, and there was no such event, and there haven't been any terrorist-style attacks at all in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and I believe that the only city in the United States named Bowling Green is in Kentucky. And this was something where she said the reason why people don't know about it is because it wasn't covered. So everyone's looking into it to try and find out if there was such a thing as Bowling Green Massacre, and it appears that if it wasn't covered by anybody, including like the local Bowling Green papers. So now this is very worrisome to me, not just because it's from the Trump administration side, but the whole fake news back and forth. Really shitty coverage in certain areas about the numbers of people that were at the inauguration, some photos that were suggestive but didn't really show the entire crowd, some bad news about Trump removing the bust of MLK that turned out not to be true, and now on this other side, from the administration saying that they actually had the largest in-person inauguration numbers in the history of inaugurations, and now she brings up a massacre that just didn't exist at all and says the reason why we don't know about it is because it wasn't covered. It really sucks because now there are seeds of doubt where no matter what side of any issue you're on, you could say, well, the other side I don't trust because they said this, and whether you're Democrat, Republican, somewhere in between, you can look at anybody now and say, I can't believe anybody, what they're saying. Most of these news outlets aren't reputable. Now, CNN historically has been pretty left-leaning, but I still would consider them a news source. But they've got things wrong in the past, and they're pretty heavily one-sided. They did give Hillary Clinton a question prior to a live debate, town hall style. Those things occurred, so that puts seeds of doubt, and it gives fuel to fire to people that are saying CNN is fake news. So partially, I try and think of myself in the shoes of a president. When someone has put false information out there, if you're going to be the one raising your hand, I'm probably going to call on you less or not at all in those situations.
But to your point,
and now we get in that
it's
issue.
been completely, so far, it's been two-sided, right? So the media has made a handful of mistakes, but then on the president's side, they've Conway and Trump and secretary or press secretary, they've all made mistakes too. So
right, but there is a big difference between the president of the United States and the speaker for the president of the United States and a reporter.
Agree.
Reporter, if they make a mistake, they should be fired. Or if it's like if it's seen that they purposely misled, then they should be fired. I think Brian Williams mentioned that he was in a helicopter that was attacked or something. He lost his job. I mean, that was a big deal.
You can't lie about this.
So there's a system in place to make sure that in the press, if there's an issue, they have to issue an apology and or they are fired from their job.
Retraction.
What is the correction, retraction part coming from the administration? And if that's something that occurs over and over and over and over and over and over and over, at a certain point, people that are on the side, they're just going to say, we'll ignore the fact that we're...
What do you say, Mike? Comments?
We're going to ignore the fact that some of the messaging coming from the president is inaccurate. We're going to ignore that. We don't care. And the other side is going to say, we don't believe anything from the president. It kind of sucks that we're in that situation now. It's unfortunate. It's kind of embarrassing. And it happens on both sides. So I'm probably more left than right. But I also don't look at it like, no, the media is totally right all the time. The media is so wrong about the election.
And I don't know if this is just a new generation that we're going through of people not caring about facts, or it's always been that way, and there just hasn't been a 24-hour news cycle and people and the internet and the information aids and the ability to check people on their BS, if you will. I don't believe anything anymore. Over the last 3 or 4 months, every time I read a headline, I feel like I have to double check the source. And every time someone talks to me or debates me on something, I'm like, is that true?
Well, and what is the source?
I know.
What's the primary source that you can go to see how many people were at the inauguration?
Well, then, just this sugar story I just told you about, the New York Times, their source is the New England Journal of Health, a prestigious journal who has published over 3. It's not true. They're paid off.
Right.
So we're now in this weird matrix where, unless you're watching sports and you actually watch LeBron James put the ball in the basket 4 times, which equates to 8 points, you can prove that. But everything else, it's like hearsay. It's crazy.
Right, yeah. It'd be like reading the next day about what happened at the Super Bowl. There's no coverage of it. And then the other team's like, we won.
Yeah, exactly.
We actually won. And they're like, no, you didn't. You lost. I'm like, no, here's what happened. And you'd be like, well, who do I trust? There's, news sources on each side saying no, the final score is 48-52 for, the Patriots.
But you mentioned a thing to me actually a few years ago. You and I were talking about politics, and you said, I think it was during the Obama-Romney, and you're like, they know that they can just lie their way through a candidacy because...
Well, the campaign.
Right, the campaign, because they know the majority of people aren't going to do their homework and, double check their facts and double check their statements. So, and that happened a lot during this campaign, but you can lie, you can tell white lies, you can, skirt that line of, truth, and people aren't going to call you on it anyway, so it actually can get you elected in the long run. So that's been the game in politics for a while now, but now with what's going on with the media and now an actual administration, I feel like making a bunch of errors. It's never been like this.
Normally, what occurs, at least in my experience, following the last several presidential campaigns and elections, is you say what you have to say to get elected, and then once you're there, you say, all right, let's put all the cards on the table, let's figure out what we want to do, and kind of change course a little bit. In this case, Trump really isn't doing anything different than he said he was going to do. The whole, ban and extreme vetting stuff, he mentioned that on multiple occasions. So if you were a voter for Trump and that's what he said he was going to do. Building a wall with Mexico, everyone's like, he's not going to build a wall. He's not going to build a wall. He seems to be trying to build a wall. He's not going to make Mexico pay for it. That was a lie.
Right.
But it looks like there's going to be construction on a wall. But overall, I think what's really frustrating for me about politics in general is that most people, if you ask them whether they would consider themselves Republican or Democrat, they can tell you. But when it comes to the issues that are traditionally Republican or Democrat, those are switched all the time. So there's some things right now that Trump is doing that if you're a Democrat, you should be really happy about.
Right.
Besides whoever he is, imagine this was just a policy that was put out. But tariffs against Mexico and this protectionism has traditionally been more of a Democratic principle. To really be the champion of the worker and the guy who's going to say, hey, you can't move your plant to Mexico. That's very much Democratic. Whereas the more capitalist Republicans would say, free trade all day. Yes, it's bad for the little guy.
Let us make our money.
It's better for the larger companies. And in general, most economists agree, all economists damn near, would say that free trade is better for everybody. In the same way that it makes sense when the United States became a country of individual states, it makes sense that us in California can trade with Arizona and there's no issues. I can go and move to New York if I want to. There's no issues with that. The United States is essentially a bank of countries inside of a trade agreement. That's all we are.
Yep.
To do that more has been a Republican principle, And now it's switched, and nobody that I hear of is saying, I'm a Democrat, I don't like the guy, I'm really impressed on what he's been able to do in terms of really bringing jobs back to the United States and worrying about the little guy. If you're a Bernie Sanders, supporter, that thing that he's doing right there, that's probably the farthest anybody's gone, even after you have Obama and Clinton saying, I'm a champion for the little guy, we support the unions. So, you see these flips, and I just don't like it when people are upset no matter who's in office if it's not their guy.
Yep.
It should be a lot more based on policy, and that's the frustrating part now, because no Democrats are saying that this is a good thing, and no Republicans are out there saying the free trade thing. Well, maybe there are, saying the free trade stuff is bad.
I do think, if you go down the list of, and they have those surveys, right, to see if you're a Republican or Democrat, but there's usually those like top 9 or 10 things that, Republicans are usually for. I just, at least our age group and people that I talk to, usually a lot of people are more in the central mindset. I mean, to try to say, I'm a Republican and I believe in these 8 things, or I'm a Democrat, I believe in these 8 things. I feel like a lot of people are on both sides of it and just, have different feelings on abortion or have different feelings on, like you mentioned, free trade or what have you. So I think that's part of the problem too, is we're kind of going through this age where it's no longer red versus blue. I think a lot of the voters and people, and I think that's why this whole election, it was more, I don't want to vote for this person, so I'll vote for this person, opposed to I'm going to vote for the Republican candidate.
Right. And just, the central outrage over whatever they do, even if it actually aligns with what you've said you agree with. But yeah, the lines are super blurry. I think a lot of people on the left, and this is one of the major issues why people wind up going farther to the right, is taxes.
Yep.
So if I ask anybody individually, what's the top amount of taxes that you think is fair to pay? Somewhere, a number in between 0 and 100. I think a lot of people would land on like 25 or 30 tops. But, once you get into 30, 40, it's like, I don't want to pay that much.
Right.
The only time you ever hear somebody saying, well, they should pay that much. So, those are the kind of issues where if you talk to anybody individually about how much should you pay in taxes, like 25 tops, even if you're really hardcore leftist, whatever, socialist, whatever you want to say, most people don't want to pay more than 25% of their own stuff.
And most people, the word may not be selfish, but they're looking out for themselves. So if they do make less than, whatever, $40,000 a year, and they're not going to be taxed at all because that's the new tax plan, but the person that's making $250,000 is going to be taxed at 99%. Hey, not me.
Right.
Let them handle it. I don't want to pay taxes. So,
right. And even when it comes to like sentencing for certain things, like the sentencing, if you smoke a little bit of crack, is really harsh.
Yeah.
Because most of the people that are creating those laws are like, crackheads, it's them. But then if it's like, well, what should be the punishment for a DUI? It's like, well,
or how about
let me get bailed out and pay $2,000. What's the
or bankers or stock market? Like, what should be, should they go to jail for life?
Nothing.
Oh.
No one goes to jail for anything.
Exactly.
Yeah. So like, it's always the stuff that goes too far is when you're looking at somebody else
that you can't relate to.
And you're saying, well, they should go to jail for a really long time if they do this, because I don't commit those types of crimes. And this has been an issue. I'm probably way off topic here, but there was a difference in sentencing between crack and regular powdered cocaine. And a lot of people felt like the reason why that's the case is because, black people were using crack more.
Right.
And cocaine was in every club in New York City. You go to Studio 54 and people are blowing lines everywhere, but it's Cher and it's everybody else, and that's cool. And then down the street, if you smoke crack, it's the exact same drug, cooked slightly differently. And they put a larger, steeper sentencing on it because people thought like, well, yeah, but that's like the, the deplorable people, like the homeless people that are smoking crack.
So
I've forgotten where I started even on that, but
to that point, I think this rolls right into a video that I saw the other day. President Trump asking people to pray for Arnold Schwarzenegger. Mike, can you throw that up?
We had tremendous success on The Apprentice, and when I ran for president, I had to leave the show. That's when I knew for sure I was doing it. And they hired a big movie star, Arnold Schwarzenegger, to take my place. And we know how that turned out. The ratings went right down the tubes. It's been a total disaster. And Mark will never, ever bet against Trump again. And I want to just pray for Arnold, if we can, for those ratings, okay?
This is insane.
And
like,
can you give me the context of where this was again?
I think, I mean, this was right around the same time with the whole breakfast luncheon. 'Cause remember you were talking about how he was talking about Black History Month and was kind of going off the top of the dome there, and it was, but
Where Frederick Douglass has done a great job.
yeah, I don't want to make this podcast sound all negative Trump or anything, but that is insane. Like for a sitting president, you're already sworn in. You got so many things going on right now. You got the refugee issue. You're dealing with
You're
a
the
lot
president of the United States.
and you're talking about ratings of The Apprentice. And that's the concern is the reason why he wants to talk about voter fraud is he's obsessed with the fact that
That he
Clinton
lost.
beat him by 3 million votes, total votes. He won the Electoral College, which is the way we elect presidents, and
Yeah,
he won fair and square.
He was
But he
elected
did
fairly.
not win the popular vote, and that drives him effing insane.
Just the fact that he didn't have as many people at his inauguration that Obama did in 2008, and why would he?
But that's, if he would have got in there and said, listen, guys, I did everything I had to do to get elected. I'm going to do me. I'm going to roll my sleeves up, get to work. And whether you agree with the wall, whether you agree with whatever he's doing, I would at least have the respect of he's in there. He's doing what the president needs to do at the best of his ability. But the fact that he's still talking about ratings and inauguration numbers and just
And if this really was the national prayer meeting, it's just inappropriate. If there's
it's
a lot of
inappropriate
if
no
there's
matter
a
what though.
right, but if you're going somewhere to say like, "Hey, we want to pray," keep in mind, I don't think that he's an actual believing Christian, practicing Christian. I think he, like many people who run for office, they say what they need to say to get in because you can't not be a Christian and run in the Republican Party. But imagine there's these sea of people that are out there to like actually pray for the health of the country, and he's like making a joke to say pray for Arnold
And then
Schwarzenegger to get
Schwarzenegger-
better ratings on a TV show.
Then Schwarzenegger gets him. By the way, if he's the president, what is Mark Burnett supposed to do? You have to have a replacement. Like, why is he mad at that?
Bet against me, yeah.
It's like-
I think probably
But Trump couldn't have
Mark
beat-
Burnett probably donated to the Clinton campaign. Is my thought. Is what he's talking about betting against.
But the fact that a sitting president is having these really minuscule discussions about stuff that just, in the grand scheme of things, means
But
absolutely.
he thinks that that's
a big
the
deal.
biggest deal. That's for him is popularity contest, and you're able to see how popular you are and how much people like you by how many people watch
And
you.
like I said, during the election, during his candidacy, if that's what he wanted to do to kind of try to be funny and try to get the crowd riled up and but once you win the damn office, I just don't. That really disturbs me. It really does.
Well, the rest of his presidency is going to be nothing but him trying to give himself good press. That's all he cares about. He wants to be in the media eye in a situation where he's winning and beating people.
Well, there was a story too.
It's not about the health of the United States. It's not about making America great again. It's about how can he look the best in his own opinion, and to him to be able to say that Arnold Schwarzenegger didn't get enough as good a ratings as me. I'm better than him. That's his way of showing that, which is terrifying.
But if you're an egomaniac, wouldn't it be trying to be the best president that's ever done it and
No.
make them? No.
No.
But if you are egomaniac, wouldn't you want to be like, I came in the office, I made all these changes, I did an incredible job, I did stuff that nobody was ever done before, I didn't have lobbyists. Like, you
But
think
think
he
ab-
would go after that goal as being one of the best to ever do it the same way?
He wants popularity.
But he would get popularity if he did a really good job as a
But he
president.
can't. He can't do a really good job as a president. It's
I
like
mean-
saying he wants to go to everybody and say the reason why I'm so successful is because my buildings earn the most money and because I've built the biggest empire and done all these things, but he doesn't. He won't even show his tax records to show how much money he made. If he was Warren Buffett and he could say, "Look, I've got more money for my investors. I'm one of the best investors out there." But Warren Buffett doesn't say that. Trump says that, and many people out there will say he doesn't have as much money as he's talking about. He's full of shit. He's just proclaiming to everybody how he knows how to make a deal better than anybody else.
That goes back to everything. The guy that says how many girls he gets or how much money he has usually is a person that doesn't do either.
And that you don't have to worry
That's
about
common.
you don't have to worry about his dick size because it's fine. That's totally fine. I've got big hands. Marco Rubio, he's got a problem. But he said that during during a debate. It's insane.
Yeah,
So,
I feel like
but
we're
those
watching. I feel like we're watching a movie. I mean, like I said, I think we're trying to look at somewhat unbiasedly, and like you mentioned, there's some things he's done that like I'm not going to say everything he's doing is absolutely horrendous, or some things that aren't too bad at all.
Well, but none of them. Keep in mind, as both of us are, Caucasian men
Right.
who own a business, most of the policies are not going to affect us directly. But I would say that there's a lot of policies that are going to affect
Right, no,
people that we
absolutely.
know. So it's easier from our position to say like, hey, there's going to, whether you believe in the wall or not, but that's not going to affect us day to day. But there's a lot of people out there that I think are looking at it like,
But what I mean, even the strongest Trump supporter, I would just like to hear the debate, and maybe you can think of what they would say. But the number one Trump supporter watching that clip, how do you defend the current president talking about ratings on NBC?
yeah, I don't know.
With all, I mean, there's thousands upon thousands of dire situations across the world that he now has to worry about. And he's praying for Arnold Schwarzenegger about ratings.
Like making fun of the guy who filled his TV spot.
Schwarzenegger came back on Instagram and said, "How about this? Why don't you come back to The Apprentice to get ratings, and then I'll be the president of the United States. We'll trade places." So there you have it. All right.
Okay, so let's get to some non-Trump news, perhaps. Okay. Mike, can you play my media spotlight, or are we jumping too far ahead?
No. What we learned this week is entrepreneurs, I guess, is next. Do you have anything? So we came back. This is probably one of the busiest weeks of the year. This is day 14 in a row for both you and I. No days off.
I think so. I think officially I had Monday off, but only because I jammed out on Sunday night.
That's yeah.
But it was,
You're still traveling and doing all that. So 14 days in a row, we worked. Speaking of Trump, we worked the SAG Awards and had a lot to do with the behind the scenes stuff on that. And that was a lot of stuff went viral.
I would say the most politically charged event I've ever
potentially
seen.
Ever. And the Stranger Things acceptance speech, where he kind of goes off about equality and everything like that, that got over 15 million views on the official SAG channel. And that's officially viral. To get 15 million organic video views on Facebook, that means that it officially caught fire and caught that viral nature. So it definitely made its rounds, and a lot of people saw those speeches.
Well, and just to think off the top of my head, maybe per award show in an election cycle year, you get one or two people saying something.
But
and a lot of times there's but Ashton Kutcher, Kerry Washington, Bryan Cranston,
Julia
Louis-Dreyfus. What's the guy from Moonlight? Maharaja Ali.
Oh, yep.
I'm probably butchering his name, but he had a really nice speech. Taraji P. Henson, the guy from Stranger Things. There's 7 right there, and I think there was a few more.
Did Denzel say anything?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think
he stuck to SAG.
Yeah.
And I think Lily Tomlin in her speech kind of said something-ish, but like 7 or 8 of the presenters or recipients of the SAG Award mentioned something political about, more specifically, not just political, but the refugee ban.
Yep.
So I thought that was really interesting, and from a standpoint of engagement, when we were, for us, we were looking for a lot of engagement. There's our daily train. The pre-show chatter, nobody was really talking about, hey, like I'm getting ready for the SAG Awards. Like most of the social chatter was still around that.
Some brands and accounts, I think, were going black on purpose, meaning we're not going to tweet right now. It's too sensitive. So
yeah, so it hurt us, leading up to the show. But then as soon as those speeches came out, we were able to capitalize on that, get those out to where hopefully most of the views were going for.
Which isn't that surprising. Usually Hollywood and celebrities, they usually lean more left, but it was a moment where that news just came out. A few stories you heard of people being stranded at airports, even Harvard scientists that have dual citizenship in some of those countries. Just some frustrating stories. So they came out and spoke their.
So we tried to get away from Trump. We circled right back.
Yeah, but anyways, that was a big week. I was pretty much up in LA the whole time. But did you learn anything from that week?
Yes. Not just from that week, but across the board. Now that we're, I guess, more involved in larger projects, there's larger budgets that are dedicated to the services that we provide. We're providing more. And
to give a little bit of context, we had 19 people working on the show, 15 people on site, doing everything from social media management to community management to videography, photography, talent wrangling,
red carpet, backstage,
highlight grabbing, gift grabbing, copywriting. So just kind of That's the
a
context.
full editorial team on site. But for that project and for a lot of other projects, you know, I think it's our clients are asking for more justification and more feedback and communication on what we're providing, how well it's working. Initially, it was a little frustrating, but I think as the larger your deals become, and the more you're doing, you can't just say like, "Look, here it is." We're not serving a burger at McDonald's. We're providing a service, and they're dedicating a lot of resources.
You're providing the $95 ribeye or filet mignon, and you're going to have people be like, "This is not medium rare."
Right.
Paid a lot of money for this.
If you say it's Kobe beef, and somebody wants to actually trace it back to wherever in Japan it has to be for that, or so overall, something that I've learned is that across the board, when a few of these issues popped up where clients in the middle of a contract or the middle of a project wanted a lot more communication on how things were going and analytics behind how we were performing, and can you show us this versus this and do cost benefit analysis, or if we could put those resources somewhere else. And if it had just been one client saying it, I think I would have taken that as, hey, maybe they need a little higher level of communication. If it gets out of hand, maybe we need to, readjust. But it's multiple clients. The negotiations are more drawn out. They continue through the project sometimes. So that's one thing that I've learned is, the larger the service you're providing, the more people that you have dedicated to it, the larger the budget that you're commanding, the more your clients are going to want to see how you're performing and whether that's worth their money. And that's okay. I think we're just going to have to get to the point where we do a good job of communicating that and, justifying what we're doing. Because in the end, I think both of us can stand behind our work 100%.
Yeah, that's what's good about it. And I think, if you want to buy a $500 refrigerator for the break room here at the office, or you want to buy a $75,000 vehicle for the office, you're probably going to have a lot more questions on that $75,000 vehicle before you pull the trigger and write the check, just because there's more money involved and it's a lot bigger of a commitment that you are making. And if it goes wrong, that's a huge loss for you. So, more money, more problems.
That's right. That's what I learned.
I think there's a fine line between, I guess, what I'm learning both with, I think, employees and also clients is when an issue comes up, I think I don't know how to explain this. It's from an entrepreneur standpoint, when you are the leader, you are the boss, everything's your fault. Like it all, at the end of the day, comes down to you. And one thing I battle with sometimes is like, did I not explain that correctly? Or did we not go over this on the phone call with the client? It's kind of a constant like, am I tripping, or was this not, you know what I mean? And I think that happens across the board, right? With clients and employee issues. And you constantly have to say, was I super clear in our deliverables, or super clear in what I needed, and there was a failure on the other person? Or am I looking inward, and as a leader or as a vendor, did I do something wrong to miscommunicate? So it's like a constant, every time something comes up, and that happens a lot more often now with you and I, both on the employee side and client side. Every time there is a little pushback or there's an issue, you constantly have to look inward like, was that my fault, or was it the other person's fault? And that's a tough discussion to have multiple times a day.
Right. Well, and then I had a little bit of an epiphany last night.
Okay.
I was talking to Corinne, my wife, about what was going on, and she asked me what had gone on that day, and I told her, and like most of the things you could look at and say like, well, that sounds like it sucks. That sounds negative. And she was like, it seems like a lot of the stuff you're dealing right now is like the negative stuff. And I was trying to think about it because I was like, I didn't have a bad day.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, of course it's all negative stuff, because if it's going perfectly, I'm not doing it at all. So the only time that I'm finding things.
So back up there.
So now that we've hired people
Right.
and we've outsourced a lot of this work to our employees who are amazing.
Right.
The only time employee is going to come to me is if there's an issue. So now most of what I'm seeing are issues that are a little bit more difficult to solve than the average everyday stuff. So now my day-to-day is, hey, we've got an issue with this. Hey, the client has an issue with that. Hey, the client is asking for this and they shouldn't be able to get it, and that's a contract thing. So all of those in general are kind of like sucky things to have to deal with. But if they weren't sucky and everything was going perfectly, then I don't deal with those issues at all. Does that make sense?
Not really.
Okay. So Cleo is managing National Geographic, right? There's 85,000 things going on with those projects, and she's subbing them out to everybody. Now, I don't hear about, 84,999. I hear about one little thingy.
Right.
But that's the one thing that she needs me to help with.
Right.
Because there's an issue for some reason.
Right.
Now, expand that across everybody in the office. Someone's coming to us and say, hey, we had an issue with this person, and I want to talk to you guys about it. Hey, we have an issue with this client. So now everybody's coming to me with their issues. So if you look at it in a certain way, that's all I'm dealing with now is the bad stuff in a good way, because I'm the one that needs to be able to make those decisions that our accounts team or our employees are like, hey, this is a little out of my, scope of work of what I want to do.
Here's the 1% of my job that I have an issue with. I need your
help.
help.
Right. Now,
your
across the
guidance.
board, if everybody gives me their 1%, then all I'm ever seeing is problems. And if you look at it like that, you can say like, well, all I'm seeing is problems every day.
But you're not.
But that's my job.
But the way you should look at it is like, but I'm not dealing with the other 99%.
Right. And I'm never going to see that other 99%. So I'm only going to have a conversation with our big clients if they're like, hey, there's an issue with this SOW. We want to talk about it. And
because very rarely a client's gonna be like, hey, I just want to give you a call and talk about how amazing you're doing. And
I never hear about it
but that's
when
not,
things are going well.
But even in a client relationship, that's not something that is expected, nor people have time to. I just want to take 20 minutes and talk about how amazing you're doing.
Right. And I'm not seeing all those emails where they're coming back and I'm like, ooh, this looks awesome. Thank you so much. I'm not seeing those at all. I'm only seeing it when there's an issue. So a perfect example would be like the SAG relationship stuff. It only came to me when there was an issue.
Right.
And I had to solve that issue. And I had to solve another one and negotiate with another client, another thing over there. And then I had to deal with like an employee issue or whatever. But as soon as we get away from the day-to-day stuff, that's all the stuff we're going to be dealing with is just fires.
Yeah, and that's what
that's okay.
You were kind
of
frustrated like a couple of weeks ago, but I was like, as we grow and as you have more employees and high-profile clients and more budget, your job becomes putting out fires. Because I've really listened to a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of successful people that are running $100 million companies and tried to just see how it is, and they're just like, I have my phone turned off because I'm on this podcast or I'm on this TV show. But I guarantee you there's 5 fires I have to put out the second I turn my phone on.
Right. So that was my epiphany, too. It's like it seems like, oh, man, this sucks because every little thing I'm dealing with is a problem. But it's like, well, of course it is. Because if it wasn't a problem, it wouldn't be coming to me at all, which is fantastic. So, our job moving forward is going to be like, eventually it's going to have to be a really big problem to get to us at all because we'll have, more defined management team and they're able to solve the little problems and somebody else solves the slightly bigger problems. And then the big problems come to us, and we're about strategy.
Going full circle, I guess for me, when you get one of those problems, again, I look inward and saying, and you've been doing this a lot too, is there something I could have done? And this is why you constantly try to fix the issues, the broken parts. Is there something I could have done to avoid this problem, or is it just a problem that would have arisen regardless?
Right, exactly. But what you're describing is
the fire
business strategy.
Yeah.
Do we need to make a system for this? Is this a one-time thing? Is there a way to avoid it in the future? Or
and that's your job,
do we just need to have a system of addressing it when it does come up? Because it will come up. When a client wants to negotiate mid-contract on something we've already agreed to.
What's our
is there a way beforehand other than getting a contract that states what we're doing exactly to deal with that? And probably not. I think that's just something where we're going to know that the more work we do and as priorities shift midway through a contract.
And we always use this example, but the way Target just assumes that 2% of their revenue is going to go out the door because of fraud, that credit card companies just aren't going to pay it. They're willing to say, well, that's an issue. However, we're going to look at it from a business standpoint, and if we checked everybody's ID, it's going to slow down our process. So therefore, we're just going to call it what it is. It's a problem, but we're going to take it on the chin.
Yeah, when the
NFL, that's the rule.
When the NFL changes the rules for social media in the middle of a season when we're contracted with an NFL team, and what we're doing, we're not legally allowed to publish for them anymore. They want to know what else we can be doing to shift gears. I don't know how we can really put something in, and I wouldn't want to anyway. Even if there was like an ironclad thing that said, hey, you're going to pay us no matter what. They'd only be paying us for the end of that contract, and then we lose them as a client. So I look at those kind of situations as like, well, things change. We need to hop on a call to discuss strategy, and that's something that would come to us. Because if there's a shift in the NFL policy, that's not something where our account managers are going to make the determination on how to shift strategy. So that made me feel a little bit better, and it kind of made me realize like, oh, that's why all these little thingies, it seems like all I'm ever dealing with are problems, but that's why.
I like it.
Okay.
Very good epiphany. I'm sure going to blaze on past Mike what we're reading.
Yeah.
Go with a tech tip. Mike, if you could pull this up on your browser, I know it won't be too perfect, but Lady Gaga had, this is the first I've ever seen, a live 360 on Twitter. It looks like it was in her.
And sorry, let's play it first.
Well, I think it was in her dressing room. It is a Periscope video that we're looking at, and Mike is scrolling around for us. I think this is before her press conference for the NFL.
Yeah.
But that got over 1.2 million views. But that's the first time. I need live 360 we saw on Facebook when Nat Geo.
There was one before from some Periscope like influencer person that I saw.
I didn't look this up on any articles or tech, Crunch or whatever. But I do believe this is the first Twitter live 360 that I've ever seen. So this is another feature that maybe is only available to whitelisted accounts right now, but it looks like they might be rolling out. So yet another feature for Twitter, who was kind of out of the live space a little bit as Facebook Live was going all in, but it sounds like they understand the importance of it now.
Yeah. I'm still a little confused on why they don't just white label Periscope as Twitter.
I know.
Because you sent me the link, and
then it opens
I
up
clicked
your other app. Yeah,
and it opens up the Periscope app. And then there on mobile, I was able to see the 360, but it was like spanned out in like panoramic. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't able to move the phone and see the different areas.
Well, and this is, Facebook kind of had another copycat of Snapchat called Poke and Slingshot, but that was another feature that was like buried or a separate app. And then Facebook did a good job of just like including everything within its one platform. Messenger kind of kicks you out to a secondary app, which I don't totally understand, but I think it's because of the whole WhatsApp purchase and trying to make that separately. But yeah, I agree. I think put it all under one umbrella so you don't have to exit out and open up Safari links or open up separate apps.
Yeah, and if you're going to do it, I mean, they really should be separate. Like Facebook is separate from Instagram, and you can share to if you want, but I don't think anyone's going to Periscope. It doesn't seem like anyone's ever driving you to the Periscope homepage to see Periscope influencers, whatever. But I do want to say, so I remember seeing a 360 a while ago. The first one was on December 28th, 2016. Alex Pettit, who was a verified like Periscope influencer, did a quick live 360 from a beach somewhere. So I do remember seeing that, but
so
this is the first time I've seen like an actual celeb.
Periscope Pro is totally open now, because what we're doing right now on Facebook Live with Blackmagic cameras and Wirecast and things like that, that allows you to ingest it. Periscope never had that ability. Now they do, but it sounds like they also have the ability to ingest live 360s.
Yeah, but I would like to start working on, I think it's Periscope Producer. Is that the term? Checking that out, because I do think that they've got some...
Mike, we also have to start pushing this to YouTube Live. Because Ben was uploading we're just talking mid-show, but Ben was uploading our full show like after we end the show.
This show.
But why not just stream live? Then there's a copy of the live show on YouTube.
Yeah, I agree. And then you can still put clips from each and put those out, and then just link to full episodes.
That's what's cool about Wirecast. You can push the same stream to multiple locations.
And I could be wrong about this, but I believe one of the draws of the Periscope Producer is that it's got some like Wirecast-esque abilities where you can have like banners running and rundowns, and it gives you some sort of...
Why is that bad?
Not bad.
Oh, you're saying it's good.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's their draw, is that there's additional features other than just running live. You can have like a little bit more of a branded look and a rundown on the left-hand side that's all within Periscope Producer. So worth looking into more.
All right, so I'm going to blaze on down to our current business goals. I've hopped on a call. We're going to have a couple more conversations with the independent financial consultant. I think we had a really good 2016, and I think both of us are trying to just educate ourselves on all the ways that we can increase take-home, increase tax incentives, and just look at our books and see if there's ways that we can be smarter about our money and investments, and employee payroll ratio compared to our cash flow and all those different things. So you're a lot more educated on the subject as me, and you kind of operate as the company's CFO. But I think even you said like it'd be nice just to talk to somebody that's.
I think especially when it comes to things like tax strategy,
right? That's why it's worked with a bunch of high-profile businesses that has really seen it all. One thing that one of the gals that I talked to, consultants, mentioned right away on the phone was, you got to start tracking hours on all projects, which is something you and I know we have to implement, but that kind of reinforces the fact that that's super important to have the data on all your clients, how much time it's taking, and being able to show the exact profit margin of each and every account.
Yeah. And, this is to a point now where we're looking to potentially shift from LLC to S Corp.
Yep.
There are clearly going to be changing tides at the IRS, probably mostly for businesses. So to be able to
How long
ping a
does
few
that
people,
take, by the way?
I mean, it depends. I mean, if they, pass a bill, then it can be enacted very quickly, immediately. So
retroactively too, like if it passes in November, they can
I guess I suppose, but I wouldn't assume that anything would be retroactive. But there may be a total change.
But I mean, if they get a tax break done before Christmas, when you file your taxes the following April, are you able to take that whole year based on that tax code?
I mean, depending on how the bill is stated, if they wanted to,
sounds like
theoretically, they could say you could go back 5 years and refile if they really wanted to put that language in the bill. I mean, if it comes from the presidency and the bill gets through, then they could do that. I wouldn't assume that would be the case. I would say that it would be set up for tax year 2017. But I mean, there's definitely going to be changes to the tax code.
Yeah.
I mean, he's talked about that, and everything else he's brought up.
Yep.
So far is going through. So that may be something that benefits us. It may be something that hurts.
Right.
I would assume it benefits.
Yeah.
Where it could hurt is if you've got a company, and this is more along the trade stuff, but if you got a company that has major operations in another country,
and he puts a tax on it,
and then puts a tax on that. But for us, it could wind up being a good thing. So yeah, just making sure that whoever we're talking to is really hip on that and being able to say like, hey, you may be able to take advantage of this if this by this date. Like those things are easy to miss if you're not in constant communication. So second set of eyes never hurts.
All right. Your current business goal, if you got one?
That's right up there with it. I think that, and then we kind of go back and forth on numbers and original content. But original content and an event, I think, is a huge priority.
We need to set we should set that meeting right now, actually.
So I want to jump to Media Spotlight. Mike, can you bring up the Media Spotlight from me? Yes.
These are the stats. People between the ages of 18 to 24 are watching 48% television over the past 5 or 6 years. You can see the other demos there as well, too. Here's another view of it. Media Redef did this using Nielsen data. Yes, CBS, NBC, and ABC are making up some of this viewing in digital. Yes, they will be some of, if not giant winners in this big move to digital video. But people sitting in front of cable boxes is over. Your kids are never going to have one. It's the shittiest piece of hardware in your house. It's the product of a monopoly. It doesn't hold a candle to an iPad or an Android device. It's over. We can debate whether it's over for 5 or 7 years, but it's over. I have a 7 and an 8-year-old. They're never getting a cable box. For those of you who have children graduating college, none of them are going to go do household formation now and get that piece of crap. It's over.
Amen.
Yeah, so this was from an IAB conference, but John Steinberg was the speaker there, founder and CEO of Cheddar, and was also the president and COO at BuzzFeed. The guy knows what he's talking about. He's kind of, got the background, and it's totally true.
Well, and at face value, everybody knows that. When you hear that, you're not like, wait a second. You're like, yeah, that makes sense. But for whatever reason, I think a lot of people just assume that it's always going to be the way it was. It's just not.
Yeah, but and I mean,
the 8 and 9-year-old, he's so right. You're not going to buy a cable box.
Right, but that's what I've been saying for so long, is that it doesn't mean that ABC and NBC and CBS
they
are
have
screwed.
To move.
It's the same content, but why do I have to do it as a cable with some thingy in my house? The people that are gone are DirecTV, because you can just go to the internet and watch the TV.
I was about this last night because I was watching a bunch of YouTube videos, and I'm like, I probably consume more media than I ever have in my entire life on a day-to-day basis, but 100% of it comes from my iPhone or laptop or whatever.
Right.
And that's like, so I'm consuming more content, so content can get to me and I can enjoy it and learn and be educated and be entertained, but it's all on a different device. It's on the phone.
And I mean, the DirecTVs and the cable providers of the world were wiped out for one reason: it's bandwidth. Internet bandwidth has made them completely obsolete. Let's Hold on real quick.
Shh.
Hey, we're live, guys. Let's be quiet.
Yeah, but that's totally true. I mean, it's all going to that device. So to think that, and that's where when radio transitioned to TV, there was a lot of very high profile. They had obviously the fireside chats, but they also had programs on radio that you would listen to, and there was voice actors, and the people that didn't make the transition from radio to TV, they ended up dying, and the producers and the people that didn't believe in TV, they ended up dying. So,
And at the time,
I just think a lot of television networks are not going to move quick enough. It's happening. The people that haven't already started the transition, they're going to die.
right. Well,
So
I mean,
you say ABC, they can still live, of course, but they gotta make sure they got their infrastructure in place and they understand.
I don't even think
where the
they
eyeballs
have to
are.
have that big of an infrastructure. Just make your stuff available on, the Netflix and Hulu's of the world, or have your own app. And that infrastructure, they don't have to invent it.
Right.
They can go to anybody who's worked on other, similar stuff. In the end, it's whoever's got the best content. So CBS is still in the business of meeting with writers, meeting with producers, putting a show together, getting it out, and giving it to the people. If they continue to do that, it'll just be a different area where you view that content. But yeah, DirecTV is sunk.
Well, you and I argue about this not argue, but we talk about this all the time. The issue becomes they're going to have to take a hit financially for a few years from advertisers who are going to be the slowest to move. So the 55-year-old VP of marketing at Gillette still is putting hundreds of millions of dollars behind television ads. And he's probably going to continue to do that for the next few years until somebody newer or younger probably takes over his position. So if you're ABC and you allow all your content to go online, Gillette's going to say, well, you're an idiot. Your views just went down 80% on linear. You're doing great on streaming, but I'm not going to make that same investment because there's so much more competition online. So to your point, yes, it is easy to make that infrastructure, but ABC is going to have to go all in and take a huge ad revenue cut, in my opinion, until the advertisers agree, wait a second, an eyeball on linear is pretty much the same as an eyeball on social, so we'll pay the same amount of money for the mention, the 15-second ad, 30-second ad that we used to do on linear, because Super Bowl commercials are $3.5 million.
Right,
Is there
but
anything online right now that costs $3.5 million? No.
But they don't consider a view and an impression apples to apples
No, they
when
don't.
it comes to online.
But it's pretty silly.
But I do think that if you're sitting in front of the television, that you're a captive audience, and so it is slightly more valuable. But that's
Disagree.
over.
Totally disagree. I saw a commercial about a new HBO series on Facebook that ran across my feed. Watched the entire 30-second ad. I'm like, I want to watch that show. It's pretty cool. What is the difference? It's on a mobile. That's the mindset though. That your mindset right now.
No. But I think there's a lot of people that will say if you have somebody watching television and you run an ad versus that same amount of money, even if it's the same amount of impressions, we wind up seeing more of a conversion from the TV stuff.
I would
argue
with that at
that's
all.
I would say
What are you
so.
basing that off of?
You're basing it off of that it would be the exact same thing no matter where you're seeing it.
Yeah, but you're saying it's a more captive audience. People are walking around. They're in their kitchen. The commercial's playing. The TV trailer is in the background compared to somebody actually watching it. And through Facebook analytics, you can say that person actually watched it for a period of time and was captivated by it. So I don't.
Well, I
think
know that
it's almost the opposite.
maybe for you.
Who are we talking about?
Well, because you're in a different bracket.
No, but how is
there's
a linear view on television more captive than if you watch a 30-second ad on NBC in your living room at 8 p.m. or you see it on your Facebook feed, 30-second ad at 8 p.m. on your telephone? What is
I don't
the
know, but
difference in that?
I think it's worth bringing up some studies because I think if you're a brand, your job is to spend money for conversions, not views. And so if you convert better in one area than the next, then there's data, I guarantee you, that will show in the end, if you're Budweiser and you do a Super Bowl commercial versus putting Budweiser onto a platform and they get the identical views.
Well, Super Bowl commercial, that's kind of like that's a whole different game. But I'm talking about traditional, let's say non-Super Bowl.
But just a television commercial, I think that's one of the reasons why they're so slow to go is because they're seeing...
I disagree. I think it's because it's always the way it's been. The same way people are still putting advertisements in magazines and the back page of newspapers. That's just the way marketing has been for so long. They're not changing fast enough. The technology is faster than the the changeover of the advertising
Right.
market.
But I think there's probably some interesting white papers out there, but I would say that for sure it would be different. I wouldn't assume that like
crazy
somebody,
statement, I think.
But would you also say then that if you hear something like on the radio versus if you see a commercial, that the conversion would be exactly the same?
I mean, that's audio versus visual. That's a little bit different.
Right, but they're also saying that there's a lot of people that are watching all these videos on mute. Like not playing sound on most of the stuff there. But I bet I would assume that every single area that you're viewing something where there's different value placed on where you view it. And traditionally,
how much Sneaky Pete stuff did you see across digital on your phone?
Right, but how many? But if they did that, on television, how many more people would tune in? I bet there would be a difference, and it's not
for
apples to
an
apples.
Amazon online platform. You're going after
maybe
people that
Amazon
watch...
online, but that's already an online audience.
I don't get that statement at all.
But you would just assume that everybody that sees it.
If Brett Regan watches a 30-second spot at NBC at 8 p.m. after The Apprentice, and he watches a 30-second spot while he's in the bathroom scrolling through Facebook, and they're both on audio, I don't see it's Brett Regan watching a 30-second advertisement. It's just on this and not on a 50-inch screen.
Yeah, but I bet there would be a lot of differences because that would be the
same. How is
there
differences?
Well, that would be the same thing as saying like if you see an advertisement for Taco Bell on a billboard versus seeing an advertisement for Taco Bell in a magazine.
But those are two 30-second spots or videos.
Seeing a static advertisement.
No, I'm talking about the same exact thing. Apples to apples is this 30-second advertisement that
but
you're
watching
on a 50-inch screen in a commercial break, or you're watching on a 7-inch screen in your hand.
Right, but that's like saying if you see a smaller advertisement in a magazine versus seeing the one on the billboard, they're printed. You're seeing
print versus print, we can make that argument too.
That's what I'm saying. So
there's no difference to that either for me.
I would probably say that they do have differences in terms of like how people tend to buy.
If you have a human being have eyeballs on your product, I just don't understand the difference in whether it's on,
We'll have to look it up, but I bet there's some studies, and my guess is that the conversion on different platforms is different. So if somebody views something on mobile versus desktop, I bet you could say that on mobile they're X times more or less likely to purchase or click or tune in. Either way, a difference. I don't know what.
Well, you can't track the conversions as easy on linear, which is part of the problem.
Right, but even let's say like linear tune-ins is not something we're focusing on because then it just goes into this thing. But if you're talking about like a sale of something, and they've got an advertisement in a magazine and a billboard and a TV commercial and a mobile ad, which one is the one that's going to convert most? I bet there's a lot of differences.
What do you think tickets to Coachella, whether it's a Facebook buy tickets now button or a commercial during a high-profile primetime event?
I would assume that on mobile or online because you can actually click it right there. You don't have to
walk into your home office and type in Coachella.com.
Right, but something that you can't just buy immediately like that, like Budweiser.
Like brand awareness.
Like Budweiser. Or is it better that you brought this up? It was the Nike commercial after the World Series.
We got a call in 10.
If they had if they had put that out across all social channels instead of television, would that have boosted brand just as much? Maybe. But I would argue that there's probably a difference in that the people that are spending the money there have to have an answer on which one is a better audience.
That's a captive audience during Game 7 of the World Series, and people are at least they're watching the ceremony and then the first commercial break. So, yeah, I get that. But I think your traditional 30-second spot in the primetime window on linear and the same 30-second spot on Facebook
But I don't think the
or
reason
Instagram,
why you're not seeing those and that you're still seeing commercials isn't just because there's an old guard at all of the networks who don't get it. I think that in the meantime, while there's still eyeballs on TV,
if that's the case,
that's a better,
you would
more
never
valuable
change
audience.
that model. Because you're saying that TV somehow has this golden throne where people pay attention to it
but if on Facebook you can get more views for the same amount of money because the conversion ratio is less on social, but you can still get more overall views to get the same amount of conversions, but you have to reach 10 times as many people than you do on TV, as long as Facebook is willing to charge you the same. But I disagree with you in that it's definitely going to be apples to apples. An impression is an impression.
You don't have cable anymore, so you're losing an entire... If your whole coveted bracket is 18 to 35-year-olds, take 18 to 25-year-olds probably pretty much out of the equation. B... everybody DVRs now and fast forwards through all commercials. C, if they're watching live, they probably mute it or walk out of the room during the commercial break. So a captive audience watching a 30-second people hate commercials.
But the thing is, all they're worried about is conversion. And so I don't think that the people at the major networks are just going like, we've always done it this way. We're going to continue to do it. Maybe a few years ago.
Not major networks, advertisers. Those are the slowest people to make the change when there's a major shift in history. There's a bunch of advertisers in the radio industry that said, this TV thing. Radio's always been the way it's done. It's always got us conversions.
I don't believe the CMO at Budweiser is like, we're still doing TV because we always have. I think that when they do it on TV, for them, they're seeing a bigger lift than if they were to get the exact same amount of impressions on social. That's my thought. So I'm sure there's a white paper, but I want to read this quote. I wrote it down the other day when I was watching reruns of 30 Rock. So 30 Rock is obviously based on the premise of the...
before you go quote of the week, are you on quote of the week?
I'm not on quote of the week. This is a fake.
Okay.
This is like a fake quote that I just found from TV that I thought was poignant for this. So he's the Jack Donaghy, who's played by Alec Baldwin on 30 Rock, I believe.
I don't watch 30 Rock.
Anyway, so he's the CEO of NBC at that point, but he's talking about the new CEO, and he says that the new CEO needs to be a grave robber willing to strip all the baubles off the corpse. And that's what all of these TV networks are doing now, because it's going away, for sure. It's going away. But while it's still there, it's still incredibly valuable. So they have to be able to milk everything they can out of it until that goes away, because you're right. Somebody who's 8 years old right now, never. But there's a huge population, including my dad, who watches television.
Including a generation in our parents that are going to live longer than ever before. So.
Right. So that's still this hugely valuable audience. And I think they're saying, like, this isn't dead. We're selling to these people right now.
I guess
Fidelity and Budweiser.
I know, but advertisers since the beginning of time, it's always that 18 to 35, or at least 18 to 49-year-old coveted demographic. And again, that's continuing to shrink month by month, year by year.
Right. But in the meantime, I would say if you said
you still have 33-year-olds at what? But
but if you say just shift gears and take everything off of TV, if you're an advertiser, and go 100% digital, in the long run, that's where it will be. In the meantime, I think that would be a bad strategy because they'd lose money in the short term.
They would lose money?
I would say they would lose money if you just said, we're reaching X number of million people here. Let's take all that money and reach that exact same X number of million people over here, and we're going to see the same conversion. I would argue, and I have no backup for this. Well, you don't either, to say that it's exactly equal across the board.
I'm not saying it's equal. I say potentially even could be better because you actually have the data to break it down. I do think people paying attention, you can actually tell analytically if someone watches a full ad on YouTube or Facebook, and you cannot tell that if it's just playing in a living room or even, a billboard on the side of the highway. Well, 1.9 million people in Los Angeles drive past this.
But if you do a local Lexus spot and you put it on television and you get an X number of conversion.
It depends who you're trying to reach too.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll look that up. We'll try and find some information on the different conversion
To
ratios.
be continued. Mike, I have that Jeff Bezos quote, if you want to pull that up real quick. So saw this come across. This is pretty interesting. So Jeff Bezos, CEO of Amazon, who we talk about frequently, says, I very frequently get the question, what's going to change in the next 10 years? I almost never get the question, what's not going to change in the next 10 years? So he said, in our retail business, we know that customers want low prices, and I know that's going to be true 10 years from now as well. So Jeff Bezos understanding not only what's going to change or new or what have you, but also what's not going to change in 10 years and how can I double down on that, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Very cool.
Looks like you want to wrap up. So quote of the week is, business plans are overrated. The minute you get out on the street, they do not work. That's from Barbara
Corcoran.
Of
love
Shark
her.
Tank.
She's great.
Yeah, love it.
Corcoran.
Who you got? Patriots, Falcons. Patriots -3.
I don't know why you can't. No way you cannot bet on the Patriots to win.
Patriots
They're
will
winners.
win it all. All right, guys, we will see you for episode 12. Brett, Regan, David Brickley. Make sure to subscribe on iTunes. Thank you.